Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the back streets of ancient Rome, where steam rises from simmering chickpea pots and whispers echo off stone walls under the glow of olive oil lanterns. You're walking through the Subura, a famously chaotic neighborhood packed with gossip, garlic, and way too many toga hems brushing against each other. It's almost curfew. You hear it, a deep bell tolling from a nearby tower, low and slow, like a bored god knocking on the sky with a ladle. That's your signal. No more yelling, no more street bards belting out songs about wine. The city must sleep, or at least pretend to, because this part of Rome doesn't stop when the sun goes down. No, the streets just shift from loud bartering and hammering to soft footsteps and muffled trades. This is Rome's other rhythm, the hush-hush market that lives after dark. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Drop it in the comments. It's always fascinating to see this sleepy little community stretched across the world like a cozy toga. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down a sloped stone lane, your sandals slipping just slightly on the worn grooves. The buildings loom close, walls stained with old rain, graffiti scratched in Latin that somehow still looks rude, and the occasional mystery drip that you don't investigate. The Subura isn't glamorous. It's dense, busy, alive, a place where people sleep three to a room and dreams share space with snoring. To your left, a vendor is packing up. He clinks his iron scales together and mutters something about figs not selling like they used to. You keep walking. That's when you notice everything's getting quieter. No more shouting. Just the shuffle of sandals, the occasional cough, and a low rhythmic hum. Someone 2 streets over, selling warm wine in a legally vague volume. You pass a torch fixed to the wall. It flickers wildly, the flames trapped in a metal cage filled with fish oil and what smells suspiciously like yesterday's stew. That's Roman lighting for you. Efficient, unpredictable, and slightly fishy. Historians still argue whether these open flames caused more fires than they prevented. But you're careful not to get too close. Either way, you follow the scent of something fried. It's faint, but familiar. Chickpeas, herbs, maybe garlic if the cook's feeling bold. You turn the corner, and there he is. Bob. He doesn't go by that name, of course. His full name is something long and official. Bobulus Maximus, maybe. But to you, he's just Bob, the chickpea cake guy. He sees you and offers a subtle nod, not too eager. That would be suspicious. After all, it's past curfew. Technically, no shouting. Technically, no selling either. But Rome's economy doesn't shut off with a bell. It just lowers its volume. Bob's cart is small. 3 wheels. The 4th broke last summer and was never replaced. He props it against a wall like a sleeping donkey. On the cart's surface, small cloth-wrapped bundles. No signs. No flashy ingredients. Just soft smells. You step closer. He doesn't say anything, just points to the sack with his chin. 3 cakes. Still warm. You nod. Bob reaches under the cart and pulls out a tiny pouch, soft leather, stitched shut on one side. You hand him your sesterces one by one, placing them inside the pouch as if you're tucking in a baby minotaur. No clink, no trace. Bob offers you a cake. You bite into it, crispy edges, soft middle, with that distinctly Roman combo of herbs and whatever was left over from the Temple of Jupiter's festival last week. It's delicious. Probably illegal, but delicious. As you chew slowly, savoring the texture like some kind of ancient food critic, Bob leans against the wall and speaks in barely a whisper. Good crowd tonight, he says, except for that guy who dropped a full pouch near the fountain. Sounded like someone smashing a brass cymbal with a goat. You both wince at the memory. Silence is currency here. Literal sound could get a vendor fined, cart confiscated, or, in one memorable case, pelted with old eel bones by angry neighbors. You ask him how long he's been doing this. He shrugs. Since the last emperor that didn't explode, I guess. You laugh, quietly, because even jokes are softer here. Bob tells you about the time he tried to sell in the Forum at night. Big mistake. Too many torches. Too many patrolling officials. He once had to pretend his cakes were medicinal compresses for sore elbows. Historians still debate whether food vendors were technically legal after curfew or whether they operated in a tolerated gray zone, like pet lizards or singing cobblers. Bob doesn't care either way. I feed people, he says. Better than starving. Better than snoring with an empty belly. You finish your cake. He offers a second. You decline politely, mostly because you know how those chickpeas hit you later. Not exactly a lullaby for your intestines. As you turn to leave, Bob gives you one last look. Watch the torch by the wine guy. He whispers, it drips, and not just oil. You thank him with a quiet finger tap against your palm. Street slang for gratitude without sound. As you walk away, you notice the city breathing differently. Shutters half closed. Cats weaving through table legs. The smell of bread cooling on a windowsill. Everything is slower, gentler. Rome, after the bell, is a whispering beast, still awake, just careful. And you, lucky you, are here to witness it. You drift further into the labyrinth of dim alleys, your footsteps barely louder than a breeze. Rome at night is a softer city with fewer demands and less chest-thumping bravado. You feel it in the stones, like the streets themselves are exhaling. Ahead, another cart, smaller than Bob's, just two wheels, propped crookedly against a wall near a crumbling arch. The man beside it is young, maybe 20, with sleep-deprived eyes and a threadbare tunic. He sees you and gestures, not with words, but with the tiniest lift of the eyebrows. This is Marcus. Bob calls him the Whisperer, not because he speaks softly, they all do, but because he sells cheese and somehow never gets caught. Marcus, unlike Bob, leans fully into the theater of silence. He communicates in what can only be described as interpretive eyebrow dance. You step closer, and he raises one brow. Hard cheese. Then a wink. Goat's milk? You nod. Sort of. And he slides you a sliver wrapped in fig leaf, still warm from sitting against the cart's lantern box. It tastes like old Rome, A bit salty, slightly sour, with the unmistakable flavor of smoke and hustle. As you chew, Marcus leans in just enough to murmur, "Watch for Lucilla tonight. She's out early." Lucilla? Oh boy. The street inspector, with ears like a bat and a hatred for snacks. Not because she's mean, per se, but because one time she slipped on a fish cake and broke her sandal strap. Ever since, it's been personal. Vendors dread her. She's quick, quiet, and if your cart squeaks, she'll fine you 3 days' wages and make you explain yourself in front of the magistrate, who, rumor has it, is her cousin. You nod, thank Marcus with a fist over heart gesture, and slide into the shadows before she catches your scent. Cheese, even the good kind, is hard to disguise. The next alley is even darker. A torch flickers overhead, but it's low on oil. You catch your reflection in a puddle, distorted, tired, but somehow amused. You're a snack scout in a midnight city, and the rhythm continues. You pass an older woman selling pastries from a window ledge. No cart, no wheels, just a tray and some questionable raisins. She doesn't even speak, just taps the sill twice. That means 2 coppers, no bartering, eat it or leave it. You admire the confidence. Historians still argue whether Roman women participated heavily in the nighttime economy or if this was a more fringe, Subura-style setup. But the truth is, after curfew, the rules shifted. Class, gender, even age took a backseat to opportunity. If you could sell it quietly and keep it from burning the city down, you had a business. You leave the alley with a pocket full of crumbs and a slightly sticky hand. Then you hear him. Bob. Not the chickpea Bob. Another Bob. Bob number 2. Unofficially, but he's not a vendor. He's a competitor. And let's be honest, kind of a legend. This Bob sells dates. Not the romantic kind. Actual squishy, honey-soaked dates, wrapped in pressed bay leaves. And tonight, he's doing his thing, whisper hawking, while pacing in perfect rhythm with his hand-carved staff. The staff's real purpose is to tap once before he whispers, like a drummer counting himself in. Tap, dates, warm and sticky, 1 copper, tap. Grown in Numidia, sweet as Venus herself. You sidle up behind a column and just watch. His audience isn't big, maybe 3 late-night wanderers and a very determined cat, but they're listening, entranced, like he's reciting poetry instead of peddling fruit. And maybe, in a way, he is. He locks eyes with you mid-pitch, gives a sly grin, and whispers, "One for you, traveler." You decline, still digesting goat cheese and residual fig pastry, but nod respectfully. He taps the staff twice in your honor. "Spare your coin," he says. "Tonight is thick with Lucilla." You look over your shoulder. Nothing yet, but the night feels thinner, a little more on edge, like the moon itself is watching. You continue, now walking a bit faster. The city is vast, but the Subura can feel claustrophobic when the air tenses. At the next corner, a dog barks once, sharp, out of place, then silence again. It's a signal. Everyone knows it. A vendor's warning bark. 1 bark, patrol. 2 barks, drunk senators. 3 barks, run. You slow your pace and flatten against the wall. And then, Like clockwork, a pair of torches appear, carried not by vendors, but by two men in dark tunics and short swords. The Tresviri Nocturni, Rome's night watch. They walk slowly, deliberately, the tips of their torches flicking like lazy fireflies. One of them stops to sniff the air. Smells like honey, he says. Could be Bob, the other mutters. The date one. You hold your breath. They pause. Look around. Shrug. Then one mutters something about cabbage farts, and they move on. Classic Roman detective work. You wait a moment, then step out from the shadows, grateful your tunic doesn't rustle too much. You've learned nightwear matters. Linen? Too crisp. Wool? Too heavy. But a well-worn tunic with soft hems, silent, perfection. You catch up with a group of runners, kids mostly, hired by vendors to deliver snacks or whisper menus through windows. One of them has sandals wrapped in cloth. Another wears no shoes at all. They nod as you pass, puffing little clouds of breath into the chilly night air. There's a strange peace in this shared secrecy. The city sleeps, but its belly grumbles, and this quiet network answers. You pause near a fountain, not to drink, but to listen. Somewhere down the hill, you hear a distant hiss, like a pot boiling over, or perhaps someone quietly telling a joke about senators and sausages. You'll go there next. But for now, you sit, let the stone cool your back. Watch the smoke from distant torches swirl in lazy spirals. It's midnight in ancient Rome. The rules are strict. The air is thick, and the chickpeas never quite settle. But for a moment, everything is quiet, and somehow it feels just right. You rise slowly from the fountain's edge, stretching your arms in the shadows as if you've lived in this night for centuries. The torchlight dances along the cobblestones ahead, soft and uneven, like the city is blinking at you through a smoky veil. And just as you start to walk again, a gust of wind catches your tunic and flutters it like an angry pigeon. You shiver, not from cold, but from the sound that follows. Clang. A metal pot just tipped over somewhere nearby. It rings against the stone like a church bell, trying to whisper and failing miserably. You freeze. Everyone freezes. Then, from down the alley, a voice, too loud, definitely panicked, shouts, "It's just soup. I swear it's just soup." Oops. You follow the echo toward the commotion, curiosity tugging at your sleep schedule. Around the Gopur corner, you spot a hunched man crouched next to a fallen pot, steam rising in lazy tendrils. He's scooping lentils back into the pot with a chunk of flatbread. His eyes are wide. Behind him, his cart leans awkwardly on a crooked wheel, like it's trying to pretend it's not involved. "Curfew, my guy," you murmur as you step closer. He looks up, guilty as a dog caught in the bread bin. "She wobbled," he whispers, pointing at the wheel. "It's not my fault. Jupiter curses my craftsmanship." This is Flavius, purveyor of what he calls spoonless soups, basically stew in a thick cup, slurpable and, if you're lucky, still warm by the time you find a corner to sit in. Tonight, his soup smells like lentils, garlic, and poor decision-making. Lucilla hears that clang. She'll be here faster than Caesar to a Senate meeting, you warn. He groans. Don't say her name. She's like a basilisk. Speak it, and your cart's confiscated. Together, you both look down the alley. Nothing yet. Still, Flavius begins scooping faster, tossing bread lids onto each cup and stacking them like secret offerings to a kitchen god. You help. Not because you're charitable, but because the faster this soup goes, the faster you get to try some. Flavius finishes just in time. You hand him 2 sesterces. No pouch this time, just a silent drop into his tunic side fold. A quiet exchange, with a mutual glance of respect. Historians still argue whether nighttime food sellers had semi-official immunity, or if most enforcement simply looked the other way after a well-placed bribe and a hot snack. Either way, Flavius lives to slurp another night. You sip the soup as you walk. It's too hot, burns your tongue slightly, and the bread lid sticks to your lip. But it's oddly comforting, somewhere between a meal and a warm bath for your insides. As you stroll, you start noticing patterns. 1 torch near a cart, vendor in operation. 2 torches, patrol coming. No torches, but bread smell. Window cellar. No smell, no sound, and a shadow moving too smoothly. Probably Lucilla. These codes aren't written anywhere. They're part of Rome's whispered knowledge, passed down from vendor to vendor like spice recipes or opinions about togas. You hear a hiss behind you. Turn around, just a cat, a very judgmental cat, sitting on a wine jug like it owns the district. You nod respectfully. In Rome, some animals outrank you. You turn back around and nearly walk into a patrolman. No torch, no sound, just standing there, holding a sponge on a stick. He raises an eyebrow. Evening walk? He asks, tone dry enough to soak a tunic. You nod. Soup run. He glances at your cup. Steam still rising. He smells it. Flavius? You nod again. He grunts. Tell him his wheel's illegal. If I trip over it again, I'm requisitioning his lentils. You murmur something agreeable and slip past, heart thudding louder than is polite. Behind you, the patrolman continues on. No torch, no complaints. Probably just needed the exercise. Or maybe he's one of the quiet ones. Those rare guards who grew up in the Subura and understand the rhythm of a softly humming city. The torchless ones are the most dangerous, like moths that bite. You veer off the main path and duck through a series of tight lanes. Laundry still hangs overhead, drying slowly in the night air like ghost togas. Somewhere above, a man sneezes. Someone else hushes him, loudly. Rome, after the bell, is a theater of contradictions. You stop under a small awning where a vendor is bent over a crate, sorting figs by softness. She doesn't look up. Late for figs, you say gently. Early for trouble, she replies, not missing a beat. You admire that. Her name is Terentia. She sells what's left over after the main market closes. Fruits too ripe, bread too hard, and gossip too juicy to wait until morning. Tonight's special, mulled dates soaked in watered wine, pressed into little squares, and dusted with sesame. You ask how much. She looks you up and down, calculates your sleepiness, and says, 1 for your thoughts, 2 if they're dramatic. You chuckle and offer 2 coins. Might as well earn the drama. The date square is dense, sweet, a little gritty, like the street it was made on. As you eat, Terentia tells you in a whisper about a vendor 2 blocks down who accidentally dropped a whole chicken skewer into the fountain, blamed it on the gods, and now claims his cart is divinely sanctioned. Historians still argue whether Roman vendors believed in their own marketing or just leaned into whatever sold best. Divine chicken probably moved faster than regular chicken, especially if Jupiter was supposedly the head chef. You finish the date square and brush crumbs off your sleeve. Terentia nods once and goes back to her figs. She says nothing else. It's how it works here. Talk when there's food. Go silent when it's done. You move on, your belly fuller than expected, and just as you turn the corner, boom. Not an explosion, more like the heavy sound of something dropping. Something big. You pause. Then, around the bend, you see it. Someone has tipped a whole cart. Chickpeas everywhere. A small boy is scooping them into a basket, fast as his hands can go. You don't recognize the vendor, but the cart bears a familiar mark. Bob's symbol, carved low on the wood. This must be one of his runners. Young, fast, not great at balance. You step in to help. Not because you're noble, but because you really don't want Lucilla to show up. The kid looks up at you with wide eyes and says in a whisper, "Please, I promised I wouldn't lose the basket again." You help him gather the runaway chickpeas, working fast, working quiet, working together. The chickpeas are still warm from the cart's cooking box, and as you scoop them into the runner's basket, they squish slightly in your hands. Soft, oily, fragrant. Each one is a tiny, spherical liability. You and the boy move quickly, hands darting through the shadows, like pickpockets on a deadline. You don't speak. He doesn't thank you. There's just an unspoken understanding. Silence first, gratitude later. A slow creak rises from around the corner. A wheel turning. Someone approaching. You both freeze, your hand still holding a slightly squashed chickpea. And listen, it's not Lucilla. It's not a patrol. It's worse. It's an old man selling sleep potions. You sigh in relief and mild disappointment. The old man's name is Octavian, and his concoctions are legendary for doing absolutely nothing. He pushes a wooden cart that creaks like an old senator's knees and mumbles at a volume that technically obeys curfew, but spiritually violates it. His robe is a patchwork of stains, each one telling a story of spilled herbs, failed experiments, and possibly one squirrel. Potions for dreams, he whispers as he passes. Sleep like the dead, or sleep next to them. You give him a nod. He's harmless, even charming in that eccentric, don't ask what's in the jar kind of way. Historians still debate whether vendors like Octavian were selling traditional herbal remedies or just creative soup water. Either way, people bought it, some out of hope, others out of habit, and a few because they liked the color. Octavian's potion bottles clink softly in their linen slings. The sound is oddly soothing, like glass birds chattering in their sleep. You and the boy finish gathering the chickpeas. The cobbled stones no longer look like a legume battlefield. The kid ties the basket with a practiced twist of string and slings it over his shoulder. Tell Bob I saved his batch, you whisper. He grins, missing a tooth. I'll tell him you dropped most of it, he whispers back. You let it slide. He's earned the joke. The boy disappears into the shadows, sprinting toward the bakery road. You stand there for a moment, hands still smelling like cumin and toasted flour, and let the silence wrap around you. Above, a shutter creaks open. Hot soup? Someone calls in a whisper shout. It's an old woman 3 stories up, wearing a wool shawl and judgment. Had some already, you call back, keeping your voice low. She squints. You don't look satisfied. You raise an eyebrow. That's just my resting Roman face. She laughs, too loud, and slams the shutter shut. Somewhere down the alley, a dog barks in protest. Someone shushes the dog. The city returns to its low, sleepy murmur. You wander a bit now, soup settling in your stomach, chickpea dust on your tunic, and the faint stickiness of date squares on your fingers. You're not exactly clean, but you're content. As you turn the next bend, the scent changes. Not food this time. Soap. It's coming from a doorway where 2 women sit on stools, stirring a cauldron of soapy water with long wooden spoons. They don't look like vendors, more like aunties with a hobby. You pause, intrigued. One of them spots you and raises a brow. Laundry's tomorrow, she says. Tonight's just scents. Scents. For the insomniacs, the other replies. Some people like to sleep next to lemon foam. She holds up a ball of something between a sponge and a puff pastry. You don't ask questions. You've learned. They hand you a small bundle, wrapped in cloth. You sniff it. Smells like lavender and mystery. You ask what it's for. Put it near your bed, the first one says. Keeps dreams sweet, or at least less weird. Historians still argue whether Roman citizens commonly used scented oils or powders to aid sleep, or whether that was mostly a luxury of the rich. But here in the Subura, even the poor could afford a whiff of something nicer than their neighbor's goat. You thank them and tuck the scent ball into your pouch. It squishes slightly, and you tell yourself, that's probably fine. You turn back toward the heart of the Subura, where the streets coil tighter and the buildings lean over you like gossiping giants. The city feels heavier now. Not dangerous, just saturated the way fabric gets after a long rain. You pass under a wooden arch, connecting 2 buildings, ducking instinctively as a bucket of something sloshes over the edge above you. It doesn't fall, just reminds you who's boss. Then you spot it, a long, low building with a sign barely readable in the torchlight. Paint peeling, half in Latin, half in bad poetry. It's a bakery, but not just any bakery. It's the bread cart graveyard. Vendors who don't sell out by nightfall come here. They stack their unsold loaves like bricks, trade leftovers, complain about yeast, and sometimes nap between flour sacks. You step inside the open doorway. It smells like every type of bread you've ever met, and a few you've only read about in questionable scrolls. A man nods at you. He's missing a sandal, but not his dignity. Flatbread, he offers. Slept on it, but it's still good. You decline, but sit beside him anyway. The warmth of the bread makes the air feel like a gently baked sauna. He introduces himself as Rufus. You don't ask what happened to his sandal. Rufus sells garlic bread, or in his words, bread that reminds you someone loved garlic once. Tonight, business was slow. Too many lentil sellers. Not enough romance. He offers you small, slightly squashed roll. You take it. It's warm, soft, tastes like regret and butter. You love it. He tells you the gossip of the hour. A senator's son was caught trying to sell moon-baked salt in the forum, claiming it cured hiccups. 2 clients fainted. One tried to marry a statue. Classic Roman get-rich-quick scheme. You laugh softly. The bread hums in your stomach. Rufus slouches beside you, breathing deep, using a pillow made of baguette. The silence here is different. Not nervous, just calm, a sleepy kind of quiet, soaked in yeast and long conversations. And then you hear it. Soft, far off, but unmistakable. The bell. One single toll. Not the warning bell. The morning bell. Rufus groans. Already? You nod. Time flies when you're hiding chickpeas. He chuckles. Back to yelling in daylight. You stand slowly, stretch your limbs, and head for the exit. Rome is waking up. The whispering night is almost over. Almost. You step back onto the stone street, your breath mixing with the cool air as the faint glow of dawn begins to bleed into the sky. It's not morning yet. Not really. But the city is shifting. Vendors start adjusting their carts, stretching their backs, cracking fingers like gladiators preparing for battle. Somewhere, a rooster clears its throat with theatrical volume, preparing to scream its head off. And yet, just before the city wakes up proper, there's still one more pocket of silence left to explore. You follow the smell of something sweet, molasses, maybe, or burnt honey, and find yourself walking toward the alley behind the bathhouse. It's narrow, slick with water, and filled with steam, escaping from ancient pipes, like sighs from a tired dragon. There, under the lip of a crumbling arch, you spot a familiar figure crouched over a tiny flame. Bob again, only this time, he's not alone. He's with Tulia, his not-quite wife, not-quite partner, and definitely the reason his cakes taste like love and mild judgment. She's holding a jar over the fire, swirling something inside. You step closer, and Bob waves you in with a breadstick. Hazelnut glaze, he whispers. Don't tell Marcus. He'll want some. You nod solemnly. Street dessert diplomacy is delicate. Tulia eyes you. He doesn't get one until he stops, using our oil to shine his hair. You sit beside the couple. They pass you a cake, still warm from the fire, soft in the middle, kissed with just enough glaze to make your fingers tacky. It's not just food, it's a moment. Historians still debate whether street vendors in Rome formed tight-knit communities or operated in cutthroat isolation. But in this alley, under this arch, it feels like family. As you eat, Bob pulls out a coin. Not to pay, but to show you. It's a silver denarius, old, worn, nearly smooth from years of trade. He points to the faint profile etched into the surface. See this guy? That's Gaius Lucilius. Poet, philosopher, supposedly invented sarcasm. Tulia snorts. He'd love you. Bob flips the coin into the air. It arcs, spins, then lands in his palm with a soft slap. No clink. Years of practice. Quietest coin toss in Rome, he whispers proudly. You finish your cake, fingers sticky, heart full. The flame flickers lower, then dies, leaving just the warm smell of nuts and ash in its wake. Tulia leans against Bob. Bob leans against the wall. You lean against the silence, Then, footsteps. Not heavy ones. Not urgent. These are soft, calculated. Lucilla, you feel it before you see her. Like a change in air pressure. Like a librarian entering a room full of whispering school kids. She rounds the corner, slowly, torch in hand, face unreadable. Her hair is pulled tight, her sandals perfectly silent. She could pass through a theater curtain without moving the fabric. She stops, looks at you, then at Bob, then at the jar. No fire? Tulia gestures to the smoldering wick. Just embers. No noise? Bob mimes, zipping his lips. It's unclear whether Lucilla gets the joke. She steps forward, lifts the jar, sniffs. Hazelnut? She says, voice like stone skipping across still water. Imported, Bob offers, with unnecessary confidence. Lucilla stares at him. Historians still argue whether street patrols like Lucilla had actual power to arrest vendors or simply used social pressure, threats of fines, and expertly honed judgmental glares. Either way, she doesn't need to raise her voice. She is the voice. After a long silence, she places the jar back down. Tell Marcus his hair oil violates street safety codes, she says. You blink. Tulia nods. Then Lucilla turns on her heel and disappears into the steam like a ghost who files reports in triplicate. Was that good? You whisper. Bob exhales. That's her being friendly. Tulia nods, licking her finger. She didn't confiscate the jar. You sit back again, watching the light creep slowly down the wall like warm honey. A few vendors pass by, nodding respectfully. A man dragging an empty basket. A woman balancing a tray of fig rolls on her head. A kid humming softly to himself, in a rhythm only he understands. Rome is yawning now, stretching, about to start shouting again. And just when you think the magic is gone, a strange shape rounds the corner. A donkey, wearing a scarf. You blink. Bob blinks. Even Tulia blinks. The donkey stops in front of Bob's cart. It nudges the wooden frame gently with its nose. Bob sighs. Ursus. Apparently, this is Ursus, the semi-retired delivery donkey who once belonged to a senator, then a baker, and now just kind of shows up. Tulia tosses him a scrap of flatbread. Ursus chews it like he's been through things. War, love, maybe a bad date with a wine cart. He sits, right there in the alley. I think he wants to nap, you whisper. Bob shrugs. He's union. I can't move him. The three of you sit in silence as Ursus begins snoring. Loudly. Donkey snores sound like a tuba drowning in porridge, and yet, somehow, it's perfect. You close your eyes for a moment, lulled by the donkey's breath, the slow heartbeat of a sleeping city, and the faintest, sweetest hint of hazelnut still lingering in the air. When you open them again, the sky is lighter. Vendors are sweeping. Kids are shouting. And someone, somewhere, has already dropped a pot. Rome is waking up. And so, reluctantly, are you. You rise slowly, careful not to wake the donkey. A feat that, frankly, should earn you Roman citizenship on the spot. Ursus grunts softly, but doesn't stir. He's too deeply committed to whatever donkey dreams involve. Probably olives, or Revolution. Bob waves you off with the lazy grace of a man who's been awake since yesterday, and Tulia just smirks as she wraps the last of her glaze in a wax cloth. You nod your thanks. No words needed. As you step back into the street, the change is undeniable. Where just an hour ago the city was whispering, now it's mumbling. Vendors are setting up in full. Doors are creaking open. Buckets of water are being splashed onto stones, and an enthusiastic man with one tooth is yelling about pre-boiled turnips, fresher than your uncle. Rome at dawn is like a coffee addict waking up, groggy, a little disoriented, and suddenly extremely loud about legumes. But for a few more minutes, you can still feel the gentler pulse beneath it all, that sleepy undercurrent, the hidden language of nods, gestures, and sugar-glazed silence. You duck into a narrow side lane where carts haven't rolled yet. Here, the buildings are taller, the shadows longer, and the smells are a little more experimental. You pass a small window where someone is roasting chestnuts over coals. You breathe it in. Smoky, nutty, slightly burnt. Rome's version of incense, and then you hear it. A whisper, clear as a bell. Garlic mash. Still warm. You pause. Look around. Nobody. Then you spot him. Perched on a stool inside a recessed doorway is an old man with a face like a walnut and a mustache so long it curls into his own ear. He's balancing a bowl on his knee and stirring it with something that may have once been a spoon. He gestures to you without looking up. You look philosophical, he mutters. You step closer. I'm digesting a donkey's nap. Ah, he says. Existential fatigue. You'll need starch. This is Diodorus. He's not famous, but he should be. He makes only one thing, mashed garlic beans with herbs and lemon. That's it. But people swear it cured their melancholy, their hiccups, even a marriage or two. Historians still argue whether these types of nighttime comfort vendors were common or simply legendary outliers. But Diodorus definitely leans into the myth. You sit beside him. He hands you a scoop of mash on a thin slice of barley bread. It's rough, humble food, but the flavor? Somehow both quiet and profound. You chew slowly. He talks while you eat. Not loudly, never loudly, just a soft, almost melodic muttering that floats in and out of your thoughts like background music at a library. Seneca ate this before speeches, he claims. You blink. Seneca, the philosopher? Mm-hmm, he hums. Said it opened the mind and closed the stomach. You nod, because honestly, that sounds about right. Diodorus leans closer. You know what else is garlic's secret power? You shake. Your head. Sleep. Proper sleep. None of that tossing and turning like a fish on market day. I mean real, snore like a brick sleep. He points a crooked finger at your half-finished bread. Finish that, and you'll dream of nothing. Like a senator during tax debates. You chuckle. What about the smell? He shrugs. That's someone else's problem. You like him. He doesn't sell food. Not really. He sells calm, stability, a predictable scoop in a chaotic city. He keeps talking about dreams, about silence, about how he once made a mash so strong It accidentally ended a local argument about goat taxes. You don't ask for details. Around you, the world starts to brighten. A cart rolls by. A woman hums as she sweeps. The sounds are soft, but building. Diodorus finishes a stir and sighs like someone who's been awake longer than the city itself. I'm closing shop, he says. No more dream beans till dusk. You thank him, stand, and feel the full weight of everything you've eaten. You're carrying a buffet in your belly, a whispering, herb-scented timeline of Roman street life. You walk slower now, not because you're tired, though you are, but because everything deserves a little more attention. The cobblestones glisten with morning dew. A baker slaps dough against a wooden table. A child runs past, barefoot and giggling, chasing a pigeon with more courage than sense. You pass a mural, faded but still beautiful, a scene of Diana and her hounds. One of the hounds has been turned into a chicken by later graffiti, classic Subura, art correction. And then you spot something curious, a crate, just sitting in the middle of the path. No vendor, no cart, just a box with a scroll on top. You pick up the scroll, unroll it. It reads, leave a coin, take a plum. If none left, you're too late, or too honest. You laugh softly and peek inside. 2 plums. You don't need one, but you leave a coin anyway, just to honor the game. Historians still debate whether this kind of honor system ever worked in ancient cities. But here, in this exact moment, it does. You walk on. Light fills the cracks now. Rome is waking fast. Vendors are shouting again. Carts are creaking. Chickens are protesting their breakfast fates. And someone somewhere has already set something on fire. The curfew bell is just a memory now. But you remember it. You remember the hush that followed its toll. The soft dances of vendors and customers in the shadows. The symphony of smells, gestures, and whispered transactions. You remember Bob's cakes, Tullia's glaze, Marcus's eyebrows, and Lucilla's terrifying restraint. And you remember the garlic. Always the garlic. You head toward the edge of the district now, past the point where Subura ends and the forum begins. The roads are wider here, cleaner, a little more polished, but you miss the mess already. Still, you know you'll be back tonight. You're not a vendor. You're not even from here. But you belong to the night market now. And it, in its strange, muffled way, belongs to you. You cross through the early morning haze, heading toward a quieter end of the Subura, where the cobbles get flatter, the alleys get narrower, and the whispers turn to breathing. This part of Rome isn't for business, at least not in daylight. It's for resetting, repairing, cleaning what the night left behind. And you're heading somewhere you're technically not allowed, because just past the old aqueduct turnoff, there's a thin alley wrapped around a marble column that shouldn't be there. On the other side of that, if you slip between 2 abandoned carts and duck under a line of laundry, you reach the threshold of the fire station. Yes, Rome had fire stations. You peek inside. It's dim, stone-walled, and smells like damp rope, smoke, and something that might once have been stew. Inside are 4 men seated on a bench, passing around a sponge on a stick like it's a ceremonial torch. You've reached the home of the Tresviri Nocturni. Rome's nocturnal guardians, fire wranglers, cart confiscators, and general mood spoilers, of vendors everywhere. They don't look particularly fierce. One's missing a sandal, another is asleep, arms crossed, leaning against a bucket. The youngest is sharpening a hook, not because it's needed, but because it makes him feel cooler. You're only here for one thing, to see the buckets, because in this fire station, stacked carefully near the door, are 10 thick clay amphorae, firefighting amphorae, filled not with water, but with vinegar, sand, and in one case, mashed plums. The oldest man sees you and raises an eyebrow. Tourist? He grunts. Bread inspector. You lie. He shrugs. We've had weirder. You sit near the wall, pretending to inspect your sandal while they go about their routine. They're talking about a fire last week. Minor one. Someone reheating lentils with too much enthusiasm. No one hurt. Just a melted ladle and a very smoky goose. Historians still argue whether Rome's nighttime firefighting was effective or more of a hopeful gesture. The tools were basic, the crews were small, and the fires were often way ahead of the response. But these guys, they care. Well, Lucilla said it wasn't a fire, says the youngest. She said it was a thermal enthusiasm event. The others laugh. But quietly, Lucilla's presence hovers over this place like a tax collector over a wedding. She's good, though, one mutters, scares the vendors silent, makes our job easier. You shift uncomfortably. You've been one of those vendors' customers for half the night, but there's something respectful in their tone. They don't hate the sellers. They just wish the fires wouldn't spread faster than their buckets. The older man nods toward the door. You come in quiet. You leave quiet. You take the hint. As you step out, the sun catches your face fully for the first time in hours. It's not warm yet, but it's coming. And as you walk back into the heart of the Subura, you spot a small group gathered at a corner. You recognize them instantly. Marcus, Bob, and the lentil slinger, Flavius. They're standing near a cistern, talking low, planning something. You slip into their orbit like a well-timed leaf. Did you hear? Bob whispers. New patrol coming in from the Aventine. They're checking for illegal cooking flames. Marcus grimaces. There goes my saffron torch trick. They'll never spot the fire if you just use heat rocks, Flavius says, with an air of suspicious confidence. You chime in. Heat rocks? Flavius grins. Stones from the bathhouse furnace. Wrap 'em in cabbage. Instant cooker. No flame. You blink. That's actually smart. Bob nods approvingly. If Lucilla doesn't catch you smuggling cabbage, you'll be fine. This is the other side of Rome's nighttime world. Tactical snack deployment. Vendors doubling as culinary strategists. Every street corner, a small war room of quiet innovation. Historians still argue whether these kinds of techniques were passed down formally or developed independently in each neighborhood. But here, they're treated like trade secrets. A whisper here, a nod there, and suddenly 3 vendors have figured out how to make stew on a cobblestone without alerting the fire team. You stay for a while, listening. They talk about a plan to build a collapsible oven, brick-patterned cloth over a hidden heat core. They debate whether figs can be sold frozen, how long boiled lentils can be chewed without drawing attention, and the best way to disguise steam as Breath missed. Then Bob leans in, more serious. There's talk of a new ordinance. Quiet, zones expanding. No vendors near temples after dusk. That changes things. Temples, especially the big ones, attract business like spilled wine, attracts street cats. Vendors rely on them, not just for foot traffic, but for a kind of spiritual legitimacy. You picture Marcus trying to hawk cheese in a zone marked sacred silence. Not ideal. Flavius sighs. We'll adapt. Bob nods. Always do. You look around at these soft-spoken rebels, each armed with ladles and linen-wrapped stealth, and you wonder how many laws they've tiptoed past, how many fines they've dodged, how many nights they've fed the city without anyone really noticing. They're not heroes. They're not villains. They're just awake. As the city yawns louder, carts clanking, chickens wailing, temple bells warming up, you realize it's time. You step away from the group, offering a soft wave. Bob gives you a quiet salute with a breadstick. Marcus raises one brow in farewell. Flavius tosses you a lentil. You catch it, don't ask why, and you walk, not just out of the Subura, but back into the regular rhythm of Rome. The sun climbs. The noise returns. The whispers vanish beneath the clamor of salesmen, guards, and children throwing olives at each other. But deep down, under all that daylight noise, the night's quiet secrets are still there, just waiting for the bell to ring again. The sun is fully up now, turning the city's stone into a dull, golden oven. Heat bakes the scent of last night's oil into the air. The cobbles sweat. Even the statues look like they regret existing before breakfast. But the morning crowds don't care. Rome is already roaring. Fishmongers are yelling about freshness with suspicious confidence. Bakers slap loaves onto tables like they're disciplining naughty students. Someone's already tripped over a goose, and right there in the middle of it all, in defiance of every rule that governed the night, Gaius. You know it's him before you even see his face. You hear it, that unmistakable, proud, operatic bellow. Spiced wine, aroma of Venus, bite of Mars. You round the corner, and there he is, robes flapping, arms open, cart smoking. Literally, he's got incense burning from the side of his wagon like a perfume ad gone rogue. His hair is perfectly unkempt, which probably took hours. This is not stealth. This is a Roman musical. You sidle up to the edge of the growing crowd. People are gathering, not just to buy, but to witness. Warm your bones, Gaius shouts. Tickle your spleen. Cure what your bathhouse couldn't. Someone claps. A patrician-looking man raises a brow. A goat sneezes. You spot Lucilla before Gaius does. She's moving through the crowd like an eel through warm soup. Efficient. Inevitable. You consider warning him. But Gaius? Gaius doesn't do subtle. Ah, he says, turning toward her. If it isn't the Queen of Shush, come to sample the finest blend this side of the Rubicon? Lucilla stops. Deadpan. You're operating in violation of Code 12. Which one is that? He asks cheerfully. The one about noise? Or the one about wine being too seductive? She stares. Gaius leans on his cart. You know, the world needs balance. Sun and moon. War and peace. Chickpea and lentil. And I am the chaos in your system. Lucilla doesn't move. She pulls out a thin tablet, a list of fines so long it's curled at the end, like a scroll that's accepted its fate. You wince. This won't end well. Then, he does it. Gaius reaches behind his cart and pulls out a tiny clay cup, pours a bit of his steaming wine into it, holds it out to her. To peace between us, he says. Lucilla looks at the cup. The crowd holds its breath. Even the goat stops mid-chew. And then she takes it. A single sip. Silence. Gaius smiles, like he's won a debate with Plato. Lucilla lowers the cup. Still too much nutmeg, she says. She writes something on her tablet and walks away. Gaius stares after her, then shrugs. That's not a no. The crowd laughs. Quietly, you finally approach. He spots you. Ah, the wanderer returns. You glance at his cart. It's part bar, part stage, part borderline disaster. I thought you were banned from shouting. I'm not shouting, he says smugly. I'm projecting. With emotion. You raise a brow. Besides, he adds, what's a fine but a tax on creativity? Historians still argue whether people like Gaius were tolerated exceptions or just incredibly lucky. Some say they greased the right palms. Others believe they were too entertaining to punish. But you know better. Gaius is Rome's pressure valve. He's the chaos that lets the silence breathe. The night vendors need him, if only to remind the world how peaceful things are without him. You accept a cup, sip carefully. It's spicy, overpowering, slightly alarming. You used cloves? You ask. Genius, isn't it? He beams. You hand it back. It's like drinking a scroll. He laughs. I've missed you, he says. The others won't say it, but you've become part of this. You nod, unsure what to say, because it's true. You're not just an observer anymore. You know the roots, the signals, the smells. You've whispered with Bob. You've plotted with Flavius. You've tasted Diodorus's mash, and you've survived Gaius. Word of advice, he says, dropping his voice slightly. Stay away from the new patrol. Aventine boys. All regulation, no humor. You thank him and start walking. Behind you, Gaius belts out. Silence is golden, but my wine is amber. You smirk. He'll probably be fined by lunch. As you head away from the market, something catches your eye. A cart parked awkwardly in a side alley. The wheel is crooked, the cover is askew, and smoke is rising from under the lid. You approach cautiously. Then you see her, a girl maybe 15, fanning the coals with a broken sandal. She's sweating, mumbling curses, and holding a bundle of sticks together with a piece of dried fig skin. Fire trouble? You ask. She startles. Don't report me. Relax, you say. Just curious. She lowers the sandal. Trying to cook breakfast. I'm new. You peer at the cart. It's a mess. The pan is bent, the bread's half burnt, and she's using soup for steam. You got a name? Vibia. Well, Vibia, you're about to make toast the hard way. She groans. You smile. Can I help? She hesitates, then nods. You adjust the coals, shift the pan, tear part of your tunic to make a better handle, and show her how to use an overturned lid to reflect heat. 5 minutes later, The bread is golden, crisp, a little smoky, but edible. She bites into it. Her eyes go wide. It's not bad. You nod. Welcome to the night economy. It never sleeps, and it rarely forgives. She laughs. Do I owe you something? You wave it off. Pay it forward. Help the next new vendor. As you walk away, she yells after you. Hey, what should I call this? You pause. Survival toast, you say. She grins. I like that. The city buzzes behind you. The day unfolds, and the quiet world of night fades back into memory. But you know where to find it again. You always will. You make your way back toward the inner alleys of the Sabura, but not for chickpeas or cheeky wine this time. You're following someone, a kid, no more than 10, feet bare, sandals tied by hope and string. He's fast, not because he's in a hurry, but because he knows the rhythm, knows which stone to skip over, which crate to jump, which archway echoes less. You follow him at a distance, like a curious breeze. He cuts down a narrow path between two crumbling walls, steps over a sleeping cat who twitches but does not wake, and vanishes behind a faded curtain hanging from an upper window. You hesitate, then step through after him. Inside, the alley opens to a hidden courtyard. Quiet. No carts, no shouting, just a dozen kids moving like ghosts. They're runners, not athletes, not racers, messengers, food deliverers, the nervous system of the Roman night economy. Each one carries something, a small bag, a folded parchment, a carefully wrapped pastry. They don't talk much. They barely breathe. One girl has a satchel full of warm rolls. She slips past a window, knocks softly, once, twice, pause, and a coin slides out onto her palm before she even finishes the third knock. Another boy has 3 flasks of soup tied to a belt. He stops by a column, ties one flask to a hook, and vanishes again. This is the Whisper Network. You sit on the edge of a broken bench and watch. The kid you followed, his name is Lurio, finally notices you. He narrows his eyes, then shrugs and walks over. You one of Bob's? You nod. It's easier than explaining. Lurio plops beside you, pulls a fig from his pocket, bites half, and offers the rest. You accept it, pretending not to notice the sand. You're fast, you say. He grins. Faster than Lucilla's sandals. That's a high bar. He points to the runners around the courtyard. We get paid per delivery. Extra if we don't spill. Double if we don't speak. Triple if you outrun Lucilla, you joke. He shakes his head solemnly. Triple if you can make her laugh. No one's achieved that. Not even Gaius. And he once tried to impersonate her, using only bread crusts and confidence. Lurio leans back. I delivered a whole fish stew last night. Still warm. Didn't even burp. Impressive, you murmur. Got a free spoon. That's a big deal. He pulls it from his pouch. It's wooden, badly carved, slightly chewed but clearly treasured. The runners here aren't just kids trying to earn coin. They're craftsmen of silence, experts in timing, balance, and speed. Historians still argue whether these street runners were formally organized or just an organic byproduct of the late-night market. But watching them now, it's obvious. They're professionals. One girl returns, winded but grinning. She holds up an empty sack. No crumbs, she announces quietly, as if it's a personal victory. The others nod, impressed. A boy with a crooked leg and a speed you wouldn't believe offers her a sip of watered wine in celebration. No hierarchy, no bosses, just a system that works because it has to. Lurio turns to you. Want to try? You blink. Me? He grins. You've got good shoes. You look down at your very average sandals. They're quiet, he adds. Flattery. It works. You nod. All right. What's the mission? He hands you a small parcel, wrapped in cloth, 2 alleys down, blue door, knock twice, don't smile. What happens if I smile? Old lady gives you soup and a sermon. You take the parcel. It's light, smells like spiced beans. You grip it gently and rise. Lurio gives you a slow nod, the kind generals give before battles, and you slip out of the courtyard. The alleys feel different now, not darker, but more alive. Every doorway could be a checkpoint. Every window could be a lookout. You move carefully, avoiding puddles, tiptoeing past a sleeping dog. Blue door. There it is. You knock twice. A hand slides through the curtain, takes the parcel, and disappears. No words, just a soft thud of coin dropped into a tin bowl beside the threshold. You grin slightly. The system works. Back at the courtyard, the runners greet you with small nods and one slow clap. You bow, dramatically, and Lurio throws a crumb at you. You smiled, he says. Worth it. They laugh. Quietly, of course. You sit again, share a handful of raisins, and for a few minutes, the world is simple, rhythmic, comfortable. One of the older kids tells a story about the time he delivered a pie to the wrong senator and ended up in a poetry reading. Another boasts he once carried 3 soups under his tunic. Didn't spill a drop, but couldn't walk straight for a week. Someone starts humming. The courtyard echoes softly with the low tune. This place isn't just a logistics hub. It's a family, a guild, a soft rebellion against the loudness of day. You lean back against the wall, hands behind your head, watching the sky turn pale peach through a slice of rooftop. Will you run again? Lurio asks. You shrug. Maybe, if the bread is warm. He tosses you a crust, and with that, a bell rings in the distance. Not the curfew bell, not the patrol, the bread bell. It's the signal that the main market is opening, and the runners, like shadows, disperse in every direction, silent as mist, focused as hawks. Lurio vanishes into the gap between 2 barrels. The fig girl scales a crate, like she's practiced it 100 times. And you stay on the bench, smiling, because in this noisy city, you've just found the quietest thrill of all. You stretch once more and rise from the quiet courtyard, brushing a bit of flour dust off your tunic. The runners are gone now, absorbed back into the rhythm of the waking city, like stars fading at sunrise. But you still feel their presence, like the echo of a whisper that hasn't quite finished. You step into the street, but this time, you don't have a destination. You just walk, letting the early morning light guide you, letting your ears follow, not the shouts and hammering of the markets, but the softer layers underneath. The sound of Rome breathing. Somewhere nearby, a baker smacks dough against a table with satisfying thuds. A cart creaks as it rolls over uneven stones, probably overloaded with amphorae again. You hear the muffled chime of bells from a passing donkey and the occasional splash as someone tosses out wash water with questionable aim. But the loudest thing you hear is the absence of shouting vendors. Because for just a moment, in this exact window between night and day, the street falls into a strange pause. The loud ones haven't started. The quiet ones haven't left. It's like Rome has forgotten itself for 5 minutes and is enjoying the silence before remembering it has deadlines and goats to manage. You walk down a long sloping road, lined with cracked tiles and plants that clearly weren't invited, but moved in anyway. As you turn the corner, something shifts. The light dims, the temperature dips, and the air smells of baked stone and distant honey. You've stumbled into the whispering path. No one calls it that officially, but vendors know it. Runners know it. Even Lucilla once called it the alley that mutes complaints. It's a narrow street between 2 tall apartment blocks, curved just enough to make sound bounce strangely. You speak here, and it feels like your words get swallowed before they finish leaving your mouth. And under the arch at the far end of this path, something's happening. There's a man kneeling on the stone, tracing patterns in dust with a stick. He's not selling, not eating, just writing. You approach slowly. He looks up. Quiet spot, isn't it? You nod. Feels like the city's whispering to itself. He smiles. That's what I tell the bread. You blink. I'm sorry? He stands and wipes his hands. I bake here, he explains. Well, technically, I start baking here. I think the dough listens better in silence. You're not sure if he's a poet or just underslept. But either way, you like him immediately. He gestures to a small oven tucked under a wooden overhang. You didn't even notice it. So discreet, so perfectly blended with the wall, it might as well be part of the architecture. Inside, small loaves of bread are rising, slowly, peacefully. I call them whisper loaves, he says. No shouting, no rush, just time, warmth, and quiet encouragement. You squat beside him and peer in. The dough is pale, plump, lightly dusted with flour. The scent is subtle, but perfect. He breaks off a tiny piece from an earlier batch and hands it to you. You taste it. It's nothing fancy. No glaze, no spice, just honest bread. But in the silence of this strange little alley, it feels like a secret recipe passed from the gods to the walls. Your name? You ask. Onesimus, he says. Baker by accident, philosopher by choice. You raise a brow. Most philosophers I've met didn't carry flour in their eyebrows. He grins. Most philosophers never fed their audience either. You sit there together for a while, watching the bread rise. Rome's loud, he says, as if you didn't already know. You nod. But loud doesn't mean alive. This. He waves at the oven, the alley, the breath between words. This is life. The bits no one notices. The space between bites. You think of Bob's cakes, of Diodorus's garlic mash, of the runners flitting through shadows, carrying warm soup and unspoken comfort. Lucilla ever find you here? You ask. He laughs softly. She tried once, got bored after 2 minutes, said the alley made her ears ring. You both smile. It's easy to imagine Lucilla storming off in frustration, declaring silence unconstitutional. A cat slinks past, pauses, sniffs the oven. That's Brutus, Onesimus says. He judges my crusts. Brutus flicks his tail, unimpressed. The sun angles deeper into the alley now, casting golden stripes across the stones. The bread is almost ready. You help Onesimus pull the loaves from the oven. He doesn't use tongs, just a thick cloth and a kind of grace born from muscle memory. He hands you one. You hold it in both hands. It's warm, soft, and somehow sincere, like it believes in you. You tear off a piece. The crust crackles like a tiny applause. The inside steams gently. Don't thank me, Onesimus says. Thank the quiet. You eat the bread, slowly, thoughtfully, trying to honor the moment. When you finish, you stand. Take the alley north, he says. There's a woman with plum tarts. She doesn't speak, but her eyebrows are fluent. You thank him, pat Brutus respectfully, and step away from the oven. You don't say goodbye. It doesn't feel necessary. As you exit the whispering path, Rome greets you again with carts, clatter, conversation. You hear someone drop a ladle. Someone else yells about anchovies. And yet, for some reason, everything sounds softer, like you've kept a bit of that silence with you. You turn north, not rushing, letting your feet find the rhythm. The day is fully here now. Shouting vendors, crying babies, roosters who missed their cue, but are trying to catch up. But under it all, there's still that hum, that quiet, that breath between beats, and you keep walking toward it. You follow the street north, as Onesimus advised, weaving through the now bustling city like a thread through a tapestry, unraveling at both ends. Rome is in full volume now, vendors shouting, carts thundering, coins clinking, and birds doing their best to sound important. But you carry the silence of the whispering path with you like an invisible blanket. Everything sounds louder, yes, but also more distant. It's like you've tuned into a different station. And now, all this noise is background music. You reach a little rise in the street where the stones form uneven steps. Climb those, pass under a cracked marble arch covered in ivy, and then veer left at the statue of Mercury, missing his head, but still pointing optimistically forward. And there she is, exactly where Onesimus said she'd be, standing next to a small, square cart with wooden wheels so smooth they've forgotten how to creak. The woman is tall, stern-looking, wrapped in layers of plum-colored fabric that match the very thing she's selling. Her tarts are lined up in rows like military units, glazed, folded, some round, some square, each one slightly puffed, like it's proud to be dessert. And she doesn't say a word. You approach. She raises one eyebrow. You raise both. She tilts her head to the side and taps her knuckles twice on the cart. A soft clunk. You nod once, slow and respectful. She lifts a tart, round, delicate, filled with a thick layer of what smells like honey-roasted plums and something spicy you can't quite place, and wraps it in a sliver of waxed linen. It disappears into your palm before you realize your fingers even reached out. Then she taps the card again. You drop a coin onto the wooden surface. The sound is soft, almost apologetic. The woman blinks once. Transaction complete. You bite into the tart. It is, without exaggeration, a quiet revolution. The outside is flaky, but not loud. The inside is rich, like a lullaby hummed by someone with pastry dough on their fingers. The flavor lingers, complex and gentle, like it doesn't want to wake your mouth too fast. You stand there chewing, absolutely still, trying to memorize the moment with all five senses. The woman watches, not judging, just monitoring your reaction like a chef assessing a statue. You smile slightly. She doesn't smile back, but her eyebrow raises a fraction. That, in this world, is basically a hug. Historians still argue whether vendors like her existed outside of poetry or gossip scrolls. There's no record of a plum-tart priestess, but she fits the myth perfectly. Silent, sharp-eyed, distributing baked wisdom to the deserving. You point to a second tart. She blinks. You nod. Transaction 2 goes just as smoothly. You wrap the tart and tuck it into your pouch like treasure, something to save for the next quiet moment, a snack for solitude. Just then, a loud crash breaks the spell. You both flinch. Down the street, a man has knocked over a full crate of olives. They scatter like panicked marbles, rolling in every direction. A pig, of all things, rushes in to claim the bounty. Chaos. The plum-tart vendor sighs, closes the lid of her cart with the precision of someone who's done it hundreds of times, and wheels it backwards into a narrow side alley that seems to exist solely for her retreat. You watch the cart vanish, gone, as if it was never there. You're left standing among rolling olives, a squealing pig, and two very confused patricians arguing over whose servant tripped first. You take a deep breath and walk the other way, because now you're on a mission. You pass two more corners, dodge a fishmonger still yelling about ocean-fresh eels caught with emotion, and then spot a small square near the end of a quiet lane. There's no sign, no crowd, but in the middle of the square stands a stall unlike the others. It's not made of wood. It's made of clay bricks, permanent, heavy, and above it is a sign in carved Latin, Silens Mercatus, the silent market. You step inside. It's not big, just 4 vendors, one with herbs, one with folded leaves full of rice and mystery, one with incense sticks wrapped in bark, and one with scrolls, not the kind for emperors, the kind you read in bed, or during naps, or when you're pretending to be deep at a dinner party. You approach the scroll stall. The vendor, a thin woman with a lazy eye and fingers stained with ink, looks up. She doesn't ask what you want. She holds up 3 scrolls, one by one, slowly. The first, a history of forgotten gods. The second, a cookbook of recipes no one remembers. The third, a guide to dreams, written by a man who claimed to sleep for 14 hours a day. You pick the third. She ties it gently with a plum-colored thread and hands it over. You place a coin in a tiny wooden bowl beside her. No words, no thanks, just a shared understanding. You leave the silent market with your scroll, your tart, and a heart so full it feels like it's about to hum. You find a shaded spot near a public fountain, one that still works despite its best efforts to fall apart. You sit. The stone is cool. The sound of water is soft and patient. You open the scroll. Inside, a list of dreams, each described as if it were a place you could visit. You read the first line: the dream where the streets don't end, and every corner sells silence. You smile, because you've been there, last night, and maybe tonight again. You finish reading the scroll's first few lines. The ink faded just enough to make you lean closer, the script curling at the edges like it's trying to whisper its secrets only to you. You gently roll it back up, tuck it under your arm, and lean against the fountain wall. The water trickles beside you, an ancient stream made modern only by the faint scent of limescale and thyme. You let your eyes close for just a moment, the warm sun on your face, the quiet hum of footsteps passing without urgency. Then you smell it, a smell so confusing, so strangely familiar yet utterly out of place, that your eyes snap open instantly. Sweet, spicy, burnt, medicinal. You rise and follow the scent, winding through a narrow corridor between bathhouse columns and a butcher shop with ambitious signage. And there it is, a lone cart, small, round-wheeled, covered by a yellowed tarp. The vendor stands beside it with arms crossed and a proud tilt to his chin, like someone who's made peace with the fact that his life smells like boiled cabbage. Curious? He asks, noticing your confused expression. You nod cautiously. It's my own invention, he says. Incense meets snack. You raise an eyebrow. Excuse me? He lifts the tarp with a flourish, revealing small clay pots with wicks. Each one has a label: fennel fig fog, garlic tranquility, rosemary smokestack. They release calming smells, he explains. But when the scent fades, you eat the leftovers. You blink. You're selling edible incense. He nods with great satisfaction. I call it flavor fog. Historians still argue whether experimental vendors like this existed in ancient Rome, or whether this is the kind of character people remember just for the smell. You peer into one pot. The scent is bold, like a herb garden got nervous and set itself on fire. Which one is safe? You ask. He thinks. Probably not the eggplant one. You choose a safer option. Clove caraway. Calm. He lights the wick, lets it smolder, and then hands it to you with a folded fig leaf. Breathe it, then eat it. You raise it to your face. The scent tickles your nose and fogs your mind just enough to make the fountain behind you feel very far away. You wait until the smoke dies out, then tap the crusty edges of the mixture with your thumb. It's solid, a little warm, definitely edible. You bite. It's crunchy, sweet, savory, confused, but oddly soothing. You're not screaming, he observes. Neither is my stomach, you reply. That's a win. You thank him, drop a coin into his tiny spice pouch payment system, and move on, mouth full of what might have once been a salad. Next, you pass a small gathering of residents, arguing over something you can't quite make out. You pause, listening. They're not fighting, they're sniffing. One holds a plum tart, the other holds a pouch of garlic mash. A third offers a handful of salted chickpeas. They're not trading flavor, they're comparing smells. Too vinegary, one mutters. This one smells like ambition, says another. You watch, amused. A woman with wild hair and a broken sandal lifts a fig and declares, "This fig smells like betrayal." And the others nod. Apparently, this is a thing. Rome's smell wars. Vendors, fiercely protective of their stall's scent, trying to outfragrance one another like competitive perfumers in a crowded food court. You listen as a man describes how he once lost a whole day's sales because someone next to him cooked cabbage for too long. "They said my soup smelled like retirement," he cries. Historians still debate whether scent was part of a vendor's competitive strategy. But standing here, watching people sniff like they're judging Olympic perfumes, it's hard not to believe it. You step in closer and ask, which scent usually wins? An older man leans toward you conspiratorially. "Bread," he says. "Fresh. Always bread. No one argues with bread." You nod. That tracks. Then someone shouts, "Herbs and lentils again? We banned that combination." The group erupts in debate. You back away slowly before you're drafted into an olfactory trial. You turn the corner only to spot the unmistakable silhouette of Lucilla, clipboard in hand, nose high in the air, scanning the breeze like a hawk sniffing for insubordination. Vendors, tense. A soup seller tries to hide his pot with a decorative shawl. Someone else drops a bag of onions and casually whistles away. Lucilla sniffs once, sharp, calculated. Whose mash smells like sandal polish? No one answers. Lucilla writes something down. She eyes you. You nod, casual, innocent, full of edible incense and regret. She narrows her eyes, then mutters, "Plum fog, breath again," and walks away. You exhale. As the tension eases, a vendor nearby leans in and whispers, "She's got the nose of a wolf and the patience of a slightly annoyed goddess." You ask, "Ever beat her?" "Once," he says proudly. "Made a roll that smelled like nothing." "What happened?" "She fined me for lying." You laugh. Quietly, of course. The vendors slowly return to their tasks, sniffing cautiously before cooking anything. You pass another stall. A woman selling reed fans painted with herbs. They're not for cooling. They're for wafting smells toward potential customers. "Get their nose," she explains. "The tongue follows." You buy one. It smells like rosemary and mild deception. The day wears on, the heat rising, the noise climbing. But you notice something beneath it all. No one forgets the night, even as they shout, bargain, argue over basil, quality. They all remember the silence, the whisper markets, the stealthy spoon trades. They know what it means to speak without sound, to sell with a glance, to thank someone with a nod. And you? You know what Rome smells like. Not just garlic and wine, but possibility, steam, bread crust, and the faint, fading trace of a plum tart disappearing down a quiet alley. The sun is perched high now, casting Rome in that blinding midday shimmer that makes even statues squint. Your feet are dusted with flour. Your tunic carries conflicting smells: smoke, plum, garlic, and possibly that experimental incense snack. You're still emotionally processing. You've walked all morning, drifting from alley to alley, from scent to sound, weaving between the loud present and the soft residue of the night. Now you need a break, and as if summoned by the universe, or possibly your stomach, you catch the gentle crack of bread crust nearby. You follow the sound until it leads you to a shaded square tucked between a laundress's wall and a sculptor's workshop. There, under a faded red awning, a man is sitting behind a cart. But he's not selling food, not today. He's selling philosophy, and also flatbread. The man has a scroll in one hand, a spatula in the other, and a glint in his eye, like he's either very wise or about to make you question everything you've ever believed about cumin. You approach cautiously. He sees you and nods. Hungry or curious? You blink. Can I say both? Of course, he replies. That's the beginning of wisdom. He flips a flatbread on a hot slate stone. The aroma rises, a mix of sesame, olive oil, and something smoky, like firewood that went to university. You sit on a stone stool beside his cart. It's warm, smooth, and bears the faint impression of 1,000 other seated backs. He hands you a folded flatbread. It's hot, crisp on the edges, soft in the center. Then he says, "Let me ask you something." Here we go. Is a vendor loud? He muses. If no one is listening? You chew slowly. I think, you reply. Some vendors are loud even when they're asleep. He smiles. You've met Gaius. You nod. He continues. This city, my friend, is a mosaic of the noise and hush, and every citizen's job is to decide which tiles they belong to. You blink. Are you a philosopher or a baker? He holds up the spatula. Does it matter? The bread's good either way. Historians still argue whether street philosophers like this were genuine sages or just retired bathhouse attendants with opinions. But here, in this moment, it doesn't matter. His words are gentle, his bread is warm, and your legs are thankful for the rest. He tells you stories between bites about a vendor who only accepted payment in riddles, about a woman who painted each fruit with a different emotion, melons for melancholy, grapes for joy, figs for complicated friendships, about a man who cooked fish so silently the gods once mistook his stall for a shrine. You're not sure if any of it is true, but it doesn't need to be, because in Rome, the truth bends toward the best told version. And this man, he knows how to bend a tale like fresh dough. The philosopher flips another flatbread, then leans in. Let me ask you one more, he says. You nod. If a patrol walks by your cart and you aren't selling, but someone still pays you, did you break the rules? You furrow your brow. I think the answer depends on whether Lucilla was in a good mood. He chuckles. You've learned well. You sit in silence for a while, finishing your flatbread. Around you, the market drones on. People pass. Carts creak. A man drops a bucket of leeks and yells something impolite in Latin. The philosopher doesn't move. He watches it all, not judging, just absorbing. You finally ask, why here? He gestures vaguely. It's quiet, but not silent. Busy, but not loud. A middle zone. The edge of the night, the start of the day. You realize this isn't a normal time slot for vendors. The city is in a lull. People are napping. Merchants are cooling their heels. Even Lucilla is probably somewhere sipping water with judgment. This square, it's Rome's exhale. You think, the man, he waves you off with the scroll. Come back when you've answered your own questions. You nod, pocket the last bite of bread, and step back into the sun. It's brighter now. Rome is fully awake, its belly growling, its wheels spinning. But you carry with you a calm that bread and riddles have gifted you. You wander toward the edge of the market where the real performers have set up. Jugglers, storytellers. A man claiming his dog can recite Virgil. You don't stop. Instead, you veer into a small alley where the walls are painted with faded murals. One depicts Mercury running with a chicken. Another shows a woman whispering to a loaf of bread. You recognize her, Tulia. The mural isn't official. It's graffiti, but done with care. Someone remembered her, immortalized her, and there, below her image, a chalk message. She fed us in silence. That was enough. You smile. Someone else walks past and nods at the mural too. They whisper, still makes the best glaze in 5 districts. You agree, silently. Further down the alley, another cart. This one's barely holding together. One wheel is shaped more like a polygon than a circle. The cover is frayed. The vendor? Half asleep, half shaved, and humming something in a language you don't recognize. He's selling nothing. You ask, you out of stock? He opens one eye. Nope. Selling air. You raise an eyebrow. Fresh. Sabura filtered. Whisper aged. You laugh. He doesn't. 2 sesterces, he says seriously. You reach for your coin pouch. Pause, then grin. Make it 3. I like premium. He pockets the coins with a nod. You now own the cleanest pocket of Rome air since Tuesday. He hands you an empty parchment roll, sealed at both ends with string. You accept it. He winks. Open it when you need a break from the shouting. You thank him and walk away, your new treasure crinkling softly under your arm. You don't open it. Not yet. Because today, the noise doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels like texture. And you're starting to understand the whole mosaic. You tuck the empty scroll of Sabura-filtered air into your tunic like it's a sacred relic, one that smells faintly of roasted chickpeas and mild delusion. And you keep walking. Your steps are slower now, not from exhaustion, but from a kind of full-bellied contentment that only comes from too much bread, too many stories, and exactly the right amount of absurdity. The sun has begun its slow slide west, stretching shadows across the alleyways and tinting Rome in warm tones of orange and dust. The market is entering its final act. Vendors shout louder, trying to sell the last of their stock before the night returns. A woman offers 6 cabbages for the price of 2, purely out of desperation. A man is auctioning sandals, used, unmatched, but blessed by Mercury himself. You smile and keep moving, turning onto a quieter road you haven't explored before. And then you hear it, the unmistakable, soul-piercing sound of coins spilling onto stone. Not a gentle clink, a dump. You freeze. Others around you freeze, because everyone knows what that means. Someone dropped their entire pouch. And in Rome, a public coin spill is like blood in the water. You turn toward the sound and see the aftermath. A young vendor, barely out of childhood, kneeling on the ground, arms outstretched, watching in despair as her entire morning's earnings scatter like startled minnows. It's everywhere. Sesterces under crates, behind barrels. One lands in a chicken coop. Another, tragically, splashes into a street basin with the comic timing of a Greek chorus. She just sits there, defeated, embarrassed. The crowd doesn't rush in, not immediately, because in Rome, coin etiquette is a delicate dance. Too quick, and you look greedy. Too slow, and you're cold-hearted. You walk over calmly and kneel beside her. "Can I help?" She nods, blinking back tears with all the pride of someone who's still pretending this is just a casual accident and not a full-blown financial catastrophe. You begin gathering coins, gently, slowly, placing each one into her pouch as if it were a baby bird. Others join in. A fishmonger, a runner, even the cabbage lady. It becomes a quiet act of community. Someone lifts a cartwheel to retrieve a particularly rogue denarius. A boy climbs a barrel to grab two that bounced off a roof tile. A man with suspiciously clean hands pulls one from behind a statue's ear like it's a magic trick. No one says anything, but the message is clear. This city may be loud, may be chaotic, may smell like 12 different herbs and 3 mild regrets, but it takes care of its own. Eventually, all the coins are gathered. The girl ties the pouch tightly and clutches it to her chest like a kitten. You nod to her. She whispers, "Thank you," so softly it's almost not there. You reply with a small, quiet tap to your chest. The universal Subura sign for "we've all been there." As you rise, something shifts. The crowd is dispersing, vendors packing up. The shadows lengthen. There's a hush coming. Not forced, not official, but anticipatory. You look toward the skyline, not the sun, the bell tower. You know what's coming. It won't ring for a while yet, but the city feels it, like animals sensing a storm. The night will return soon, and with it, the whispers. But before that, you want to visit one last place. You wind your way down the eastern slope of the Subura, past the old temple ruins turned into an impromptu garden, past the silent alley where Diodorus once made you question your life choices through mashed garlic. At the end of the road sits a tiny stall, barely wider than 2 shields. You almost miss it, except for the quiet melody floating through the air. A flute, played badly, but lovingly. You peer behind the stall and see a young man perched on a stool, feet up, flute to lips, eyes closed. His cart is unattended. His wares, roasted nuts and honey clusters, cooling on a plank beside him. He plays one note, then another, and then a third, entirely unrelated to the first 2. You wait until he opens his eyes. "Oh," he says, "didn't see you." "I heard you," you reply. "Eventually," he laughs. "I'm still learning. The flute's my way of saying I'm open, but not too eager." You nod. "Business good?" "Depends who's listening." You buy a cluster of honey-coated walnuts. He hands it to you without breaking eye contact, like he's worried you might grade his next solo. You chew slowly. It's sweet, slightly burnt, unapologetic. Music helps, he says. Even when it's bad, people stop. They smile. They remember you. Lucilla like your music? He winces. She confiscated my first flute. Harsh. She said it endangered public. Sleep. You both laugh. As you turn to leave, he lifts the flute and plays a final note. Still off. Still earnest. You walk away humming it anyway. You've got roasted nuts in your pouch, a scroll of dreams under your arm, a tart waiting for later, and a faint tune echoing in your ears that might be in the right key. And you're thinking about how a city so loud can leave you feeling so calm. You round the last corner and find yourself at the overlook above the forum. The whole city sprawls before you. Temples, baths, bakeries, the river shimmering in the distance. And for just a breath, Rome is still. A pigeon flaps lazily. Bell somewhere rings the quarter hour. And you? You just listen, because you know the day is ending. And the whisper is coming back. The air is thick now. Not hot, not cold, but that peculiar Roman in-between, where every breeze smells like stone dust, warm olives, and the breath of the city itself. You remain at the overlook for a while, letting your eyes trail lazily across the rooftops, some smoking from evening hearths, others glowing orange from the lowering sun. You're not in a hurry. No one is. Even the pigeons look like they've called it a day. And then it rings. The bell. Not sharp, not urgent. Just one long, low tone that unfurls across the rooftops like a silk ribbon sliding off a marble column. You don't flinch this time. You've heard it before, lived under it, eaten chickpeas by its law. The curfew has begun, and with it, the city begins its second exhale. Shouts taper off. Vendors cover their carts. The louder markets fold into alleys and courtyards. You see a boy tug his mother's hand, hurrying home. A dog curls up on someone's sandal, as if it has every right to be there. You descend from the overlook. The streets are glowing now, not with sunlight, but with lanterns. Soft ones. Olive oil flickers inside hand-blown glass. Some are mounted on walls, others dangling from wires strung between buildings like forgotten prayers. Your footsteps echo now. That wasn't true this morning. You pass a familiar corner where Gaius once tried to sell you wine that doubled as wood polish. He's not here now. Just a chalk drawing on the wall. A little cartoon of a wine jug with a beard. Someone's tribute, perhaps. Further down, you spot a familiar outline. Marcus, hunched over his cart, polishing his cheese wrappers with obsessive devotion. He sees you and raises an eyebrow. Then a finger. One cheese left. You nod. He slides it to you, wrapped in a fig leaf. You place a coin in the cloth sack, tied to the wheel. Spoke. No words. Not needed. The cheese is sharp and soft, and tastes like someone's quiet gratitude. You keep walking. A young runner darts past, barefoot, clutching something round and steaming. His sandals are tied to his belt. You catch a glimpse of the inscription burned into the leather. Silence, speed, service. You nod respectfully, though he doesn't see. As you round the bend, you pass the fire station. The Tresviri Nocturni are seated outside now, playing dice in the gutter. The sponge stick leans against the wall like a sleepy sentry. One of them glances up. Quiet tonight. You shrug. He spits a plum pit onto the ground and says, Good. You don't break stride. A breeze picks up, light and dusty, carrying with it the smell of warm bread and extinguished torches. Somewhere above, a woman waters her window garden and hums a song older than the Forum. And there, just ahead, you see Bob's cart, tucked into a shadow, torches unlit. He's sitting on a barrel, arms folded, staring at the street like it's about to tell him a secret. You approach slowly. He doesn't look at you, just pats the crate beside him. You sit. He hands you a cake. No words, no eye contact, just cake. You bite. It's warm, soft, tastes faintly of lemon and smoke, and last chances. Lucilla walks past. She doesn't stop, doesn't find him, doesn't write anything. She just tips her head, barely, and keeps walking. You blink. Did she? Bob nods. Progress. He stretches his legs and sighs. You know, I used to be loud, he says. You nod. I can see it. I shouted every sail like I was calling troops to battle. Used to scare the pigeons. What changed? Bob picks at a splinter on the barrel. I lost my voice one night. Just gone. Couldn't yell for a week. You wait. And I made more coin that week than any before. He smiles. Turns out, he adds, some people like being asked nicely. You both sit in silence. A lantern flickers across the street. Someone plays a flute badly, again, and a cat jumps onto the crate beside you, yawns like it owns the empire, and curls into a ball. You stroke its fur absently, your mind heavy, but unbothered. The city is quiet now. The Sabura whispers, and your eyes grow heavy. The night deepens around you. Shadows stretch longer, darker, but they don't feel cold. They feel like blankets being pulled gently from across the city. You close your eyes, but the sounds remain. Not harsh sounds, not urgent ones, just the steady drip of a leaking fountain nearby, the flap of laundry in a forgotten window, the low hum of vendors packing up, whispering promises to return tomorrow with better figs and warmer rolls. A breeze moves down the alley, brushing your cheek like the city itself is tucking you in, and the torchlight flickers. You remember the warm bread from Onesimus's alley oven, the cheese from Marcus, the tart you've still saved in your pouch, waiting. The scroll of dreams presses gently against your side, reminding you that tonight, when you finally close your eyes, you won't just sleep. You'll wander back through the quiet. You'll pass Bob's cart, wave to Lucilla, who nods maybe, and dodge a runner with soup so hot it's almost a weapon. You'll walk the whispering path again. You'll find the woman with no words and the best eyebrows in the empire. You'll eat garlic mash in a place no map remembers, and you'll fall asleep to the lullaby of the softest city on earth, not the loud Rome, not the Rome of marble and speeches and battles, but the Rome of lanterns and flatbread and coins dropped gently into silence, the Rome that waits just behind the curfew bell, close, your eyes now. The night is long, but gentle, and it's all yours.